Diptyque Laurent joins me now for a browse through the French papers, and today we're looking at territorial elections on the French island of Corsica.
That's right. On the face, it might not sound very interesting, but it is actually quite important, and especially the result, because it was really the antithesis to the Catalonia separatist vote. The nationalist leader in Corsica, his name is Gilles Simeoni, well, he won a landslide victory. That's what the local paper there, Corsica, says on its front page. He picked up 47% of votes in a first round that was largely marked, it must be said, by absenteeism. But there was also a resounding defeat for Emmanuel Macron's La République En Marche party that picked up just 11% of votes. Now, the right-leaning paper Le Figaro also calls it a landslide victory. Clearly, Corsica, once known for its separatist ambitions, is not following in the path of Catalonia, as was the worry after that independence vote in Spain. Clearly, we have no reason to fear that there is a sort of knock-on effect of separatist demands in Europe. The Corsican election shows that, I quote, autonomy is the antidote to independence, at least for this writer from Le Figaro.
Now, speaking of independence movements, let's talk about another French territory, this time Nouvelle-Calédonie, New Caledonia, which is, of course, an overseas territory in the Pacific.
That's right. They're gearing up for a independence vote sometime next year, sometime before November. That's what L'Opinion, the right-wing paper, says. New Caledonia wants to vote on its independence. In fact, Prime Minister Edouard Philippe is in New Caledonia right now, trying to lay the ground or prepare the territory for the post-vote atmosphere, really. He wants to ensure that whatever the results of this vote will be, that there won't be any violence or social tension following the vote. Now, irrespective of what happens, this vote will be historic. That's what L'Opinion says. New Caledonia has been a French territory for 164 years, and those who will be eligible to vote must have lived in New Caledonia continuously since 1994. In particular, there are fears that if the no camp wins, those who oppose independence, well then New Caledonia could see some post-voting violence, social unrest, that sort of thing, which is why Emmanuel Macron himself will also be heading there next May.
It is rather incredible. Nouvelle-Calédonie, 20,000 kilometres away from France, from mainland France, here in Paris. Moving on now, the Conservative Party here in France is also preparing to vote. They'll be voting on the new leader of their party later this month.
That's right. And this is the man who is tipped to win that election, according to Libération. His name is Laurent Wauquiez. He'll take, if he wins, well, the paper says he'll be taking the French Conservative Party even more to the right, because Libé explains that Wauquiez is somebody who is not interested in running after Emmanuel Macron. Rather, he's looking to pry votes away or pry support away from the far-right party, the National Front Party. He has almost word for word given the same speeches as the National Front Party, all the while swearing that he's not interested in an alliance with them. Now, speaking of politics, here's a blast from the past. Benoît Hamon, you might remember him for as the unfortunate pawn during the presidential elections. He was, of course, the Socialist Party's candidate and sort of set up for slaughter, it must be said, during those presidential elections.
That's fair to say, yeah.
Well, he's back in business, according to Libération. He set up his own political movement called Génération, with an S, the paper notes. The idea is to create a, quote, progressive French movement that's center-left. Think of it as a new-look left-wing movement, but he's still a long way off if he's hoping to take this movement to the Élysée in 2022.
Well. And finally, from you, Deepti, there's a big event happening this Monday afternoon here in a French zoo. Tell us more.
Well, 4 months ago, the Beauval Zoo, which is about 2 hours from Paris, well, they welcomed a baby panda, and the zoo has nominated its godmother as Brigitte Macron, the French First Lady. She'll be assisting in the so-called baptism ceremony this Monday afternoon. It must be said, and at this ceremony, we'll finally find out what his real name is, because he's been provisionally named Mini Yuanzi in reference to his parents. Under the bated breath of 100 accredited journalists, well, the French First Lady will be presiding over this ceremony. We'll find out his real name. It's actually a really highly diplomatic affair, because There'll be French representatives, but also Chinese representatives at the ceremony. Worth noting that this is a really big deal for China. They only lend their pandas. They don't give them away, of course. The idea is to lend them to zoos around the world with the idea of protecting its species. Often these transactions are secretive and costly, so we never know how much they really cost governments. As for Brigitte Macron, well, she won't get to hold the panda because they're not very cuddly animals, apparently. Instead, she'll have to settle with just posing for a photo with him.
I mean, the one behind you looks particularly vicious, it must be said. Duptyque Laurent with a look through the French papers. Thank you very much indeed.